opening words this morning are from Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. And I just will remind us a little bit about his life and then give you just these few words of his. He is one of those people who can, in just a few words, focus your mind and spirit in a way that can turn your day. Howard Thurman was spiritual advisor to Martin Luther King, among other leaders of the civil rights movement. He also met with Gandhi and was deeply involved in the teaching of nonviolence in our country. And Howard Thurman also was one of the co-founders of a church in San Francisco that was founded to be a church where African American people and white people would worship together. And it takes intention and great care to make that kind of community successful, and they did it beautifully. So these are his words. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless or familiar, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. This morning I will invite you to write down your joys and sorrows, and after our meditation time I'll read them aloud. And so in the first 20 minutes of the service, as we're singing and going through our liturgy, if there's a joy or a sorrow that you wish to share, I invite you to write it on one of the cards. They're mostly in the hymnal racks along the center aisle here. You may find them along the hymnal rack. They're about this big, and truly any piece of paper is just fine. You can bring those pieces of paper up here while we're singing together and put them in our Tree of Life bowl. And after our meditation time, the ushers will come down the aisle and check with those of you in the balcony seats back there and collect cards if you don't want to walk forward, so that we'll collect all of those after our meditation time. Thank you. Last week we had our ancestor Mary Gilman visit, and she talked about her work with the suffragettes in 1868. And this morning we have the 2018 version of a suffragette. Renay Allen Hitzrot will light our chalice this morning wearing a sash that she made as part of the FUUSE art activists work that went along with the anniversary Women's March in Portsmouth in January. And the theme of that march was voting. Renay was awed by the 70 years of work that the suffragettes put into getting the vote for women. And she is also aware that back then black women asked to be included in those efforts, but were not. And in an effort to make amends, Renay has crafted this updated sash. The front spells out Black Lives Matter. And the back includes others that need protection and legislation, the protection that legislation provides: trans, gay, Mother Earth, and First Nations people, and all of the beautifully blended shades of pink, tan, and black. Renay, before you sit down, I wonder if we might tell you one other thing.
Each year, our congregation recognizes a member who is living our ethics out in the greater community. These are people who guide us, inspire us, and invite us along to participate more in public life. Recipients of this award from over the years are displayed in the hallway between the sanctuary and the community room. They are individuals who have made a difference by living our Unitarian Universalist values out loud in the world. The Board of Trustees has received 6 nominations for this award this year, and 3 of them were for this year's recipient. I am delighted to announce that Renay Allen Hitzrot is the winner of the FUUSE Ethics in Action Award. Renay has used her multiple talents to build community in aid of environmental and social justice for a long time, but her efforts have gone into super hyperdrive this past year. The work she's championed this year alone are almost too numerous to name, but I am going to try. Renay was a leader in gathering people to join the 2017 National Women's March, and she organized a virtual Women's March at FUUSE to share the progressive, loving energy of activism with all of us shortly after. You probably know that she was one of the members of the Culture Keepers, Culture Makers Art Group for Racial Unity in Exeter, whose work has been displayed widely, including right here, and her painting of a glowing goddess facing a line of police in riot gear brings tears to my eyes. Renay has been active in the program Energize 360, a solar panel initiative in which she has helped earn enough credits to be granted a free panel for a building in downtown Exeter. Renay is responsible for helping to bring a host of great speakers to Exeter in her work with We the People. That lecture series engages thousands of folks every year in conversations around the intersections of religion and current events. Renay is also a member of Exeter Rises, a new progressive group that focuses on local and state politics. And in her spare time, she's been inviting Exeter people to create a literary heritage trail right here in town. Renay's community activism is interwoven with her commitment to FUUSE. She's an active member of the Social Justice Committee, the Green Team, and the Artivists, whose clean energy mural has been displayed in numerous locations. And she's also the co-editor of the Active Hope newsletter, which keeps us updated on opportunities to get involved in all of the justice work our church members are connected to. No one can match Renay's brilliant energy as a community organizer and voice for change. However, she manages to multiply her efforts by encouraging all of us to partner with her. We are inspired by how Renay puts her ethics into action, and we are so grateful that she's a member of our FUUSE community. Thank you.
Well, I'm joining good company. Sylvia, Skip. Thank you.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is a sacrament, and the service is prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to respect the nurturing power within all of us. Thus do we covenant. Tis a gift to be free, tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, to be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till our turning we come from right.
We are in for a treat this morning with this, with the 4 movements of this 4 hands on the piano piece by Debussy. We'll just hear one of them now, and we're saving one of these pieces listed as special music to add to the offering. invite you into a time of meditation with a poem. It's a little bit longer poem than I sometimes use. And I have just been reading more of our current poet laureate, who is, she started in September, Tracy K. Smith. And she has a book of poetry, and I've forgotten the title. I think it's Living on Mars. It's Living on Mars, which I thought was particularly apt this week since another member of our country sent up a rocket in the hopes that we could go and live on Mars. So I will be sharing more poems by Tracy K. Smith this month, because they're fabulous. This one is called The Universe as Primal Scream. 5 p.m. on the nose. They open their mouths, and it rolls out high, shrill, and metallic. First the boy, and then his sister. Occasionally they both let loose at once. And I think of putting on my shoes to go up and see whether it is merely an experiment that their parents have been conducting upon the good crystal, which might lie shattered to dust on the floor. Maybe the mother is still proud of the 4 pink lungs that she nursed to such might. Perhaps if they hit the magic decibel, the whole building will lift off. And we'll ride to glory like Elijah. If this is it, if this is what their cries are cocked toward, let the sky pass from blue to red to molten gold to black. Let the heaven we inherit approach. Whether it is our dead Old Testament robes, whether it is our dead in Old Testament robes, or a door opening onto the roiling infinity of space, whether it will bend down to greet us like a father, or swallow us like a furnace, I'm ready. I'm ready to meet what refuses to let us keep anything for long. What teases us with blessings, bends us with grief. Wizard, thief, the great wind rushing to knock our mirrors to the floor, to sweep our short lives clean. How mean our racket seems beside it. My stereo on shuffle, the neighbor chopping onions through a wall. All of it just a hiccup against what may never come for us. And the kids upstairs still at it, screaming like the dawn of man, as if something they have no name for has begun to insist upon being born. I attended a workshop or a continuing education program for ministers a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that we talked about was sort of the process of trying new things. And that we often try to figure out how to get it just right before we try something. And so sometimes you spend a lot of time trying to get it just right and then it still doesn't work. So they suggested that one of the things to do is to just try some things and then be really intentional about reflecting and learning. So I tried this new way of doing written joys and sorrows this morning. And very interestingly, I had, there are two that really should be spoken aloud by the people who submitted them to me. So we're going to do sort of a blend this morning, which is the new thing. So learn with me. So I'm going to read the cards that are here first, and then the two people, one of them can decide. She might be just as glad to have just be the card. You can. Self-determination, always. Trying to do the psychic uplink. Back to you there. This person, whose name is not on here, wants to share how joyful and inspiring it was to be part of the Growing Into Our Mission gathering yesterday. I am filled with hope and gratitude for this community. Amy Robinson wants to share a joy. Happy birthday to my son Silas, who turns 28 today, and happens to share a birthday with Neil Ferris, who is here today. Holly shares a joy that her father is home from rehab at last. Herb Moyer says it is a joy having Karen back home from great-grandparenting. Bacheloring is not all it is cracked up to be. Fran Chandler shares two joys. Rebecca, her daughter, had successful knee surgery a couple of weeks ago. She's recovering well and will soon be pain-free and active. All capitals underlined twice. A couple of weeks ago, the two of them went to a Shabbat at Temple Emmanuel in Haverhill with her Girl Scout troop. And it was an awesome experience, and I think I was the one most excited to be part of it. Delaney, who went waltzing out of here, left this to say, dance competition season is about to start. I am so excited. Someone else tells us, I worry for my dear uncle who has endured many months of chemo and is now going to have his bladder removed tomorrow. Sean and Janice Tierney ask for our loving attention sent out into the world and ask that we keep their niece Jen and her husband Andrew's family in your prayers. Andrew's brother and wife were in a serious car accident with their family. His sister-in-law died and his brother was hospitalized. The 3 young children are okay. We know that they need our positive energy sent their way. Jan Stevens says, I am very grateful for the generous and loving care from so many of you in the form of cards, meals, hugs, and visits following my mother's death. Those acts of kindness have meant more to me than I can say. And one more that says, I have the pleasure of being page turner for the 2 beautiful pianists this morning. Amy, would you like to practice, or do you want me to just read your card?
I'll come up.
Having to choose in front of everyone is not an easy way.
I'll just speak. Hi. I'm Amy Farnham, and, okay, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. So I was happy to learn that you were going to read the Joys and Sorrows because I have a major fear of speaking in public. So right now my heart's pumping and my mouth is dry, and you guys come up here and you make it look so easy. And you're witty and you're funny and you're confident. So I thought I'd practice because I have to speak at my company meeting this week, which is a great honor. It's for over 200 people. And so I'm honored to do it, but I'm mortified. So I thought I would come up here and practice in front of a very supportive group and channel the confidence I've seen in all of you. And I'm still shaking. Yeah, and hopefully my audience will be as supportive as you are.
Great.
For this year's UNH MLK tribute, Neil and I are hosting 2 people who are activists in residence at UNH, and they're staying in our home for 3 weeks, and it's such a joy getting to know them and their work. I hope you get to meet them at coffee hour. Christine Hendricks is a school board member and a survivor of police brutality while she was on the Ferguson front line. She also heads up the knitting ministry, We Stay Woke.
Our mission.
It's a mission.
Our mission is the knitting.
Yes, it's our mission. Asia Dorsey is a food justice worker and futurist who is planning for the day after tomorrow. She started a new company that's co-owned and run by the workers. So I think you'll be hearing more about their work next week, and welcome Christine and Asia.
As someone has already mentioned, we had a workshop here yesterday about living into our mission. About 30 people gathered in the parish hall, and we had a great conversation about how we live deeply into our purpose. And in that conversation, we navigated all the things you have to when you are having a big conversation about why we do what we do and how we do what we do. We had some lovely moments of recognition and appreciation, and we had some moments of conflict and frustration, and worked through that. The thing that I was keenly aware of at every step of our process is that we are having this conversation about mission, about purpose, and logistics of church life in the midst of a moment of great cultural change. Every generation of people is having fewer and fewer people attend church, and fewer people expressing interest in attending church. But they are expressing the same level of interest in spiritual matters, in the need for community and belonging, and the need for spiritual grounding and social justice engagement. And so what church is keeps shifting in response to that. When I started here 17 years ago, the financial records were kept in a big ledger book, written by hand. Since then, we've gone through, I'm not sure how many software programs to track our finances. Not to mention that people used to put money in envelopes with their number on it. And now, quite a few of you pledge online. And that's in 20 years or less. And those are just small examples of how much the ground is shifting in the culture around us and in our congregation. One of the things that we noticed recently is that when we had a paper newsletter, I used to write a monthly column. And then when we switched to a weekly announcement page, I stopped doing that because the form wasn't there anymore. Now we are figuring out how to reestablish some of those connections. So we're figuring out mission and direction and focus when a lot of the ground is shifting. And a lot of churches are thinking about how do we adjust ourselves to this uncertain and reforming time. And so that is what we talked about at the continuing education seminar that I went to a couple of weeks ago. It was called Faith Animates Innovation. And we had a lot of conversations about change in the world and in church. And we talked a lot about how much organizations have to be deeply grounded in their mission. We were given several examples of new organizations being started by millennials. That's people from 18 to 34. And these are organizations that are meeting those needs for community and spiritual grounding, but doing it in a different way. And so we really kind of studied them and what they're up to, and the thing that they do that makes them vital and amazing in the world is that they're very clear about what their purpose is and how they go about living all the way into it. And so that's what we really began to do yesterday, was not only look at the words of our mission, but think together about how do we live really deeply into the meaning of our mission. As Jane said at some point yesterday, it's easy to have words. We have some great words about mission and covenant and our benediction. And it's important to not stop at the words, but live all the way into the action. So we talked about the ways that we're already really living into that mission. Noticing that the things that we do overlap and integrate. We figured out how to keep pointing ourselves toward beloved community. And remembering that being together and figuring out the purpose continually is essential to staying focused on it. And then I heard, of course, Renay Brown on the radio. And she was talking, as she does these days, about belonging and spirituality. And she repeated her definition of spiritual, which is the understanding that we are deeply, profoundly, completely connected to everything. That that's never gone. We can forget it, but the connection is never gone. And that it is that that holds us in this community and in the innovative communities that millennials are starting in some other places. And that is what we can always hold on to in the midst of this change and these conversations about how we live into our mission. So as we wrestled with the how of living into our mission, we discovered that we had different ideas about how best to live into our mission. And that's when we got a little restless sometimes in our conversation. One of the things that got said, we listed all of these things on great big sticky notes. And you'll get a big full report of all of the conversation. So I'm just giving you just a taste of it. One of the things that was talked about as one of the things that we wrestle with in order to live into our mission is remembering not to take things personally, which is one of the things that I think all the spiritual teachers talk about it, but Renay Brown talks about it too. And it's not something that I can dig in on today, but it was interesting to me that it was observed as one of the things that we wrestle with as we try to live into our deep purpose. And then the other things that we talked about were communicating in the midst of all of the change in the world and in our congregation. And communicating in the complexity that is our lives now. And that is one of the things that we will just have to keep talking about and keep figuring out together. And keep hearing your innovative ideas about how to make sure that we're talking about what we need to talk about and not overwhelming you with information, because that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges in the world today, is that you get so much that you can't get anything. So we have to manage that in the congregational life, figure out how to focus what we're talking about and doing and choosing. Which connects to one of the other things that we talked about, which is making sure that we have sustainable structures. Which I think means making sure that they're not too complex, so that we get sort of lost in the intricacies of it. Making sure that they're flexible but stable. It's a tension to hold. And it's one that you hold in your own lives. Making sure that we can change and respond, but not be so changeable and responsive that we're sort of wishy-washy about things. Making sure that there's enough resource to support what we want to do. Staff, volunteer, monetary understanding of what the structures are. So that should keep us busy for a couple weeks. And as we engage this new mission statement that we have, these are the things that we have to just keep making sure that these things line up with the work we want to do in the world. That every move we make here points us toward that mission. Because that's how we keep our anchor in all of the turning tides and storms of the world around us. At the end, someone said, don't get lost in the details. Keep focused on the mission. And it's easy to get lost in the details. And so we have to have the conversation all the time. It has to be a spiritual practice, meaning we always come back to that awareness that everything is connected, that we're already all together, that we're already in that life where the crying babies and the great vastness of space are in one arc of meaning all the time. That's true. And we just have to figure out how to get back to that. And that the details about email can be worked out. And if it's frustrating, try not to take it personally. That's the how of that is that's the catch, isn't it? I want to tell you one more thing that got said that I think is important. It was all important. It was hard to, I sat with these notes last night and thought, how am I going to give you just a little taste of what this conversation is that we hope was the beginning of a conversation, the beginning of a continual return to how do we live into this? How do we really live it? So the one other thing that got said that kept coming back to my attention was, how do we make sure that we nourish people who volunteer? And one of the things that was interesting to me is that in addition to making sure that we're spiritually nourished and appreciated and celebrated, one of the things that got said about nourishing volunteers was that we also end work when it's done. Which I thought was a beautiful insight, that sometimes the way to nourish the work is to say, this piece is done now, and we'll let it be done. Which is its own piece of that spiritual work. How have we served the purpose? And how can we move on to the next piece? So lots of conversations to have over the next years. And the conversations are about how do we live it? Because if we're not living it, then we're not alive in it. And why else be here together than to be alive in it? So I invite you, as you meet with people in this congregation, to do the work, whatever it is. A committee, cleaning up the yard, scraping ice, oh my gosh. All of the work, from the board work to coffee hour, everything. Before you start that work, take 3 minutes together and read that mission. It's in the cover of your order of service. And think together for a minute about how the work that you're doing in this moment, whatever it is, connects to this mission that we wrote together. How does your work participate in it, enliven it? And if you come to the conclusion that it doesn't, maybe part of nourishing the work is to let some things end, even if they've been great. But most of all, to make sure that everything we do points us that way, so that we can really be alive and sparkling and giving out the good news that this community has to give out. We got to celebrate one person this morning, Renay, who's just out there shining in the world with it. And the truth is, we all are, this whole congregation is. We just need to let it shine a little more brightly. And then we'll see that what we're doing does fit with that perspective that the poet gives us. That when we're out there at the edge of the atmosphere, when the cries of being human together have sent us all the way out, and we can see the whole universe spinning around us. And we can see what treasures these warm lives are. What a gift this tender green ball is. And that we get to honor it together. Time this morning, Donna Jensen will share a few of her thoughts with us. Thank you, Donna.
Hello, everyone. So if you weren't here, whoops. So if you were here last week, we kicked off the annual fund and the capital campaigns here at FUUSE. The annual fund is basically our operating yearly budget at the church, and in the past, we called it the pledge fund, and it always, happens in February. The capital campaign, however, is the new fundraising initiative that will fund much-needed improvements to the facility. And I hope that if you haven't already realized that or read this somewhere, that those two campaigns are actually being coordinated together this year. People have many, many reasons to support and contribute to these two campaigns. And if you need evidence of this, please check out the Dream Board in the church hall, because posted there are many practical, sweet, and very moving reasons why people have supported FUUSE over the years. And I have a lot of reasons too. I first attended FUUSE here, I think about 8 years ago, and I remember that it was February. My first Sunday here was February because people were talking about the annual fund and fundraising for the annual budget. I don't really actually remember much about that first Sunday. I have to assume that Kendra gave a fantastic and inspiring service. I'm sure that Mary played the piano, absolutely sure of it. The choir may have sung. Yeah, I don't remember the details, but what I do remember was just a few Sundays later, in March, I actually pledged to the community. And that seems a little crazy, after only a couple of services, not really knowing anyone, not knowing much about the church. But I did. I loved the services. I appreciated Kendra's insight and her inspiring services, her sermons. I loved the meditation. I loved the music. I loved it. But then, you know, when I stepped back and I looked at the organization, and I must say that I didn't know that I was going to be speaking here until Thursday, and I didn't know what Kendra would be talking about. I didn't know necessarily the award was going to be given out. I didn't know Sylvia would be talking about her guests. But that's just to say that there are no coincidences. But when I stepped back and I actually looked at this organization, I knew that it was something I needed to support. You know, I appreciated the caring committee taking care of individuals here when they need help, when something difficult is happening in their life. I really am very grateful to the outreach committee who is looking at what's going on in Exeter and the Seacoast, and they're seeing what things are happening and what initiatives need to be supported. I really admire the social justice committee that is continually, year after year, standing up for things that need to be defended, people, issues, important things. And I love the green team. They are showing us, helping us, giving us opportunities to know how to take care of the earth and tread lightly on it. All of those things. So, you know, I saw a community that was taking care of itself. I saw a community that was taking care of the world. And they were living a mission. And that was inspiring to me. So today, I support FUUSE because I want to be a part of that. And I want to make sure that it continues into the future. So this February, you know, I invite you to reflect on the question, you know, why do I support FUUSE? There are a lot of reasons to do it. And after you do that, attend a gathering, learn about the two campaigns, and pledge as generously as you can. Thank you.
Up front, if you wish to light one for a memory or a hope during this time. The morning offering for the life of this college will now be received. Please join in the unison benediction. The words are printed in the reversals. Go,
peace, speak the truth, give thanks each day, respect the